Dave?
So I'm going to have a few reactions to that, then I'll let Roxanne react to that. And maybe I'm going to steal potentially a little bit of Roxanne's thunder. So it was really credit to her that our theme for this year that you have seen in a lot of different places is our stronger assessment hashtag. And I think what you're hearing from our college president, what you're hearing from us today is that's really what we're looking for. We have been doing assessment well at GCC. We can be doing it better. And there's some places we need to grow. So I think we're hearing that echoing of that stronger assessment. I also really like, and this was something that Tiffany shared with me at the very beginning of this academic year when we met, she said, if we're going to do this work, we need to give faculty and staff time to do this work. We have to take something off their plate. And if it means that we take work off the plate one day a semester in order to do this, then that's what we're going to do. And I love, and this is kind of a standard practice in assessment. It's not something that we've done as much here. Instead of having to kind of carve out the time, this is one way that we can try to provide some of that extra resource along with the support of the assessment team and everybody else to help our faculty and staff really do this work.
And I love having a president who's supporting the work that we do every day. And assessment, I've heard, I can't understand that some people don't love it as much as I do, but I've heard that that might be the case, that it feels like just something that we're checking off. But really, assessment is what we do every single semester. Every time we do a lecture and assess, how did that go? Should I adjust it? Should I fix it? Every time I have an interaction with a student as a counselor and I assess, how did that go? How could I fix it? If I host a club meeting and no one shows up, I can assess, how did that go? How can I fix it? So we're asking you to keep doing the great things that you're doing, but to document it, to prove that this is what you are doing and that it's being done effectively and that our college is giving students the accomplishments of their goals and that proof that they can put onto their resumes and transcripts and documents. So it's awesome to have support and to have an administration that's behind us and behind you accomplishing this work that's vital to our jobs.
So you might be going, whoa, wait, how much more are we going to have to do? So let's talk about that for a moment, because it's not going to be as intense as sort of you may expect. First of all, we wanted to acknowledge the incredible course assessment structure that we have here at GCC. We've been doing course assessment for a very, very long time. It's evolved in numerous ways over the years in response to best practice and the changes sort of in the assessment structure. And we are just now ending our cycle of our second 3-year cycle of course assessment. One of the things that we have done, I think most importantly in the last 2 of these cycles, is focusing on really thinking through that student learning improvement, not just doing sort of the check the box. We had a little bit more of the check the box earlier on where folks were saying, oh, I assessed this and they did great, so I'm kind of done. And we're like, okay, if they did it great, well, then don't assess. I mean, assess that as part of your course or whatever you're doing as your natural work as a faculty member or staff member, but look for where the gaps are, look for where students are struggling and do something meaningful in that space. So we have kind of moved to this course assessment structure that has tried to dive into that. We have encouraged you all, and many of you have done, all academic departments have started doing common course assessment in some places, having those conversations with colleagues. We've been recently talking about the Plan, Do, Study, Act model to really be much more intentional in thinking through. So there has been incredible work. We want to thank you for all of the work that's going on. One of the things you maybe heard the president say is, at her previous institution, she maybe had the data at her fingertips a little bit more easily. So some of these resources that we're talking about may put that data at your fingertips so you don't have to wait to get it, so that you can make some more of those changes on the fly, or that you can see it documented. We would love to see a system where some of this is a little bit more embedded in Canvas, so it's not sort of this layer of work. It's just you're doing your regular work, and yet you can see some of this, and we can maybe pull some reporting. So we're hoping to actually sort of streamline the course assessment process as we move forward and make that even easier for faculty. I'm also going to turn this over to Roxanne because she's been a department assessment coordinator, and you may have some insights on course assessment as well.
I think course assessment is helpful because we are getting a really focused view if we keep our focus 2020 metaphor going as long as we can. So if we're narrowed in, we're really zooming in on one particular assignment or one particular skill to determine if students are succeeding in that skill. And when we say we want stronger assessment, it's thinking of how we can use that data more strategically. So how does this one skill also represent a skill that's happening in another class, in another department? How is that supported by our library or by our sports teams? So looking at these connections helps us to start expanding that view rather than just the microscopic view of one particular class. It's helping us to expand. So as a department assessment coordinator, I assess my own courses as a faculty member, but then I can also get the wider view of what are other folks doing in their classes and how does that tie to what I'm doing in my classes, and where might there be opportunities for success department-wide, where might there be opportunities for me to be better and to do things that other folks are doing, you know, just steal ideas from other people and implement them in our own classes. So it helps me to start taking that more expansive view.
And just quickly on that note, we have a fabulous team of assessment developers, and what they are so good at doing is you might not be so sure what you want to do, and they'll sit down with you and they'll just say, hey, what's something your students are struggling with? Tell me a little bit about it. And those conversations often evolve into, all right, let's figure out how to make this better for students, make this better for you. And then that's assessment. So I think sometimes we get caught up in the word of assessment, and that's why, you know, some of what, you know, our subtitles today is improving student learning, because that's what we all want to be doing. Now, the two next things that are up here, number 2 and number 3, came directly from HLC. So we, as you all know, we have a number of degree programs. We have our guided pathways, emphasis degrees. We have a number of other degrees that we offer here. We haven't done as much at this point looking at those program learning outcomes. Our CTE areas have been very good at this for a very long time. You know, they have that interaction with their advisory boards. They're often writing specialized accreditation reports, but there's some room for improvement in our academic areas, certainly, especially with guided pathways. And again, if you're like, wait, how am I going to do all of this? A lot of what we're talking about is we're always on the academic side going to be assessing in our courses. That's where assessment happens. And so the issue becomes, how do we align what we're doing in our courses to provide insight on our program learning outcomes, to then provide insight on general education learning outcomes, you know, institutional learning outcomes. So with the program, what we're really looking forward to doing next semester is beginning to curriculum map our program learning outcomes to our courses. We have a level of this already through Maricopa, but it's not as detailed as we would like it to be. So what we want faculty to do in their discipline areas is to sit down and think, okay, how do these required classes help support these program learning outcomes? Recently in psychology, I made an argument that we really didn't have effective program learning outcomes, and we are in the process of rewriting our program learning outcomes to do better, to set the goals better for our students. So one of the hopes of assessment is that you've changed curriculum. Curriculum might be within your own class, but it might be you influence district curriculum changes, you influence program. So next year, we're going to start to kind of really think through what these maps look like, and then we'll be making determinations around how do we begin to take some of that course assessment data and use it to inform these programs. So that's one of our big upcoming projects. That's probably the biggest of our upcoming projects.
So when you hear that a big project is coming, it may cause you to gasp aloud or to angrily stare at your computer screen. But when we think of stronger assessment, it can also be viewed as smarter assessment, that rather than adding more to the plate, we are just rearranging what's already on our plate. my metaphors go awry. Maybe I'm hungry. So we have to be really careful when we look at those program outcomes, aligning them to what's happening in our classes and seeing how they relate to others. So we're not adding additional steps. We're just making our steps smarter. We're making sure that everything that we're doing is being used as effectively as possible. I'm going to jump to the next slide, or the next step is general education. So we know that there's been some upset with AJAC and looking at what changes might be coming for these classes. But we also have to make sure that we're seeing how students are being assessed at the general education level. So again, aligning these with what we're already doing helps us to track this more effectively. So it's not adding extra steps, it's not adding extra calories to your plate, it's just eating healthier, smarter, using our assessment better, wiser, stronger.
I love that metaphor. Thank you so much. All right. Speaking of general education, there's a couple things we can think about. So one of the things we haven't done a lot here at GCC is think through, what does it mean to have a certain tag? How are those faculty who are teaching a class tagged in a certain way, ensuring that whatever the key learning of that tag is actually occurring? So those might be some conversations we're going to have going forward around what are the outcomes we might want kind of content-wise a little bit. What are the things that tie psychology and anthropology and sociology and other SB tag courses together? And are we ensuring that students who are taking a 101 in any of those areas are getting key skills? Now, the nice thing about Gen Ed is we already have our institutional learning outcomes, these higher order skills, our communication, our information literacy, our quantitative reasoning, our diversity. And so one of the things that's going to be happening, again, smarter, not necessarily harder, is that our institutional effectiveness team is rebuilding our ILO dashboard to include Gen Ed, our current Gen Ed tags. So we will be able to go right into that dashboard for faculty who are already doing assessment of our institutional learning outcomes, and we can start looking at, all right, what are the courses that are providing assessment of critical thinking or of career readiness, and how can we maybe take some of that data institutionally and make some improvements? Because obviously faculty and staff in their programs and activities and courses are going to be making improvements. The goal of general education, institutional learning outcomes, are how do we as an institution implement some changes that are going to move things forward. And then the last one, co-curricular assessment, and I'm going to toss this back to Roxanne.
So we've talked a little bit about, or a lot of it, about assessment that happens inside the classroom, but as we mentioned, assessment happens outside of the classroom, and that's how we are defining co-curricular. HLC basically tells us that we can define co-curricular in a myriad of different ways, but whatever definition we choose, we have to stand by. And that's the line that we've drawn in the sand, that anything that's happening outside of the classroom is co-curricular, and it's still helping students. It's supporting their learning, it's guiding them. It might be keeping them on campus and keeping them meeting their goals. It's part of that engagement that's happening for students. So co-curricular is effective, and we want to add this to what we're already doing. We want to pin this to our blackboard and say, we are doing this well in a variety of different ways. So by measuring co-curricular, we're just showing that it's already working. I like the metaphor of a resume, that when you applied for the job that you're doing right now, you had to submit a resume and show us all of the skills and education and knowledge and experience that you have, even though you already have it. It wasn't enough to just show up and say, I'm a great teacher. Believe it. You had to prove it on that resume. You had to prove it in that interview. And that's what assessment is. It's showing us, it's proving what you're already doing so that we have the documentation that we keep our accreditation and that students are still able to meet all of their goals. So that's what co-curricular is about. And we'll be working with different groups to assess this better and to help champion assessment in that venue.
And we've already been having some conversations among some key people in co-curricular to say, we do a lot co-curricular. And, there's obviously always bandwidth issues. This is gonna be something similar to program assessment. If you have one student in your AA emphasis program, you're not necessarily gonna be doing comprehensive program assessment. We're gonna be thinking very thoughtfully about how we roll these things out. So one of the things we've thought about with co-curricular is which co-curricular activities really support specific student learning outcomes. Not that students aren't learning in every activity they're doing, but the documentation that we've been beginning at this point kind of says, all right, in order to be considered co-curricular in the definition of do we need to be part of the assessment program, you really need to have a curriculum plan kind of your co-curricular activity. So we are being very, very mindful of how many spaces we're going into because of the workload associated. And we are going to be rolling it out very systematically in all these spaces to ensure that it meets the bandwidth of the folks involved. So those are the number of things that are happening or will be continuing to happening, but a lot of this is just going to be the scaffolded work, and that's where some resources, maybe some technologies will really help us in this process. So the next thing we want to spend a little bit of time on is, I've been here for 7 years in this particular role. We've had Tuesday Tidbits, I think, for 5 years. We have over 70 videos on our GCC assessment YouTube site. We, of course, have our Gaucho site. And so some of the questions we have for you are, what do you know about assessment? Can you articulate what assessment is? Can you explain why it's important, particularly to students, not just to yourself or your colleagues? Do you know how we conduct assessment at GCC? How do we go from just assessing learning to ensuring that learning is improving? So there's sort of lots of resources out there. So we would get you to be maybe a little self-reflective about what do I know and what do I maybe not know so much, because what we're going to be talking about for Spring Assessment Week is how do we help you become stronger in your assessment knowledge. And then I would also ask you to think about how have you supported assessment. So faculty are always doing a lot of assessment support. We have our managers, our deans, our administration is supportive of assessment. We have staff who are very active in doing assessment in different places too. And so we'd like you to pat yourself on the back. You're like, yeah, I've done a good job with assessment. And then we're also going to begin to ask you to think, how do we be stronger? All right. On that note, let's talk about what we went to ACT to say that we needed. And we've just altered the slide a tiny little bit for this particular audience. So we have a number of things on the slide. I got to come back here and look at it a little bit more. So we have, what are the needs we need from our executive team? That would be our vice presidents and our president. What are the needs from our deans and directors? What about our managers and chairs? And then finally, our faculty and staff. So the first column, you'll see learning and doing. Those are going to be the next two slides. We need everybody to learn what they need to learn to do the assessment they need to do, to make sure that they have the knowledge base to kind of level up that work. We are all here for you on the assessment team, lots and lots of resources in order to do that work better. But we need that sort of basic level from everybody. And depending, of course, on your role, you may need more or less of something. But again, big plug to our assessment developers who are here to walk you through anything you need. But this is sort of the expectation of our entire college community. From there, we go to sort of messaging and modeling. So one of the things that the assessment team has been asking for of ACT and others is, how do we see the importance of this work, if it is a true college priority, being demonstrated by kind of our managers, chairs, and sort of above? Because obviously we need to see the commitment of our college, of our administration, to sometimes support this work, to help us find time to do this work, to help us find the energy to do this work. So one of the things, if you are in those top 3 categories and you need some support about how to do this, please let us know. But we're hoping that those of you who are faculty and staff will start to see a little bit of a different messaging, as you've probably seen today, about the work of assessment and trying to really help us find the time to do that. From there, we go kind of to co-leading the work. You'll notice that lots of faculty are involved in this work. We definitely have key staff involved in this work. You know, I've been working with Genesis on some co-curricular assessment with a particular student group. You know, Carly sits on CART as a dean of instruction. We have Susan Campbell supports program review. So we have a lot of people in a lot of places now, but we might be asking for a few more folks to help us ensure that we're really having a comprehensive view of where we need this work to go. And lastly, under strategic discussions, this is sort of our highest level. So you'll hear the president has a vision of where she would like us to go. And so we want to be in conversation with our executive team, with our administrators around what do you think is the right place for us to go? How do we get there? How do we fund it? Time, personnel, whatever else. How do we help meet your needs and your visions? So we're hoping to have a lot more kind of strategic discussions that then we can use to move us forward.
And this is one of our first examples of the strategic discussion. And if you're hearing this, then you're part of it. So you can help to guide this process. If you have questions, if you have comments, you can put those into the chat where we can monitor them. You can reach out to me or to Julie, and we can keep this conversation going so that as we continue to produce more videos, this is 71, but 72 is coming. So we'll know what it's going to be about. We'll know what you would like to learn about or where you need more support. So continue the strategic conversation so that we can help you.
And certainly we invite everybody to get into some of these conversations. If you're in the co-curricular space and you're like, hey, I want my voice heard, great. Let us know. assessment@gccaz.edu. If you're like, wait a minute, what's this program assessment thing? And what are you going to be making me do? Come to us. We can answer your questions, and we might also, and we won't, we might try to suck you in. You can still say no. But, please come and join us. Now, looking at this, we've talked about kind of learning and doing is what we want for everybody. So we have given some clear recommendations for how you can learn and do here in the beginning. So number 1 under learning, during our week of accountability this past spring, we did 11 things to know about assessment. It was on January 11th. We started at 11 p.m. It was really fun. And it's not 11 minutes, but it's 11 minutes times 3, I think. So, but it's 11 things to know about assessment. So if you're not so sure about what's going on in assessment, you can check this out. This slide deck will be shared. These are live links. You can always go there. It's, of course, in Tuesday Tidbits and other places. So that's a nice, really good overview of assessment. Number 2, Tuesday Tidbits. I mentioned we've had Tuesday Tidbits for the last 5 years. So please take just a couple of minutes on Tuesdays when they come out to read them. And we appreciate that. If you have any questions, you can respond to them. You can also go back in and look at our archive and read all the Tuesday Tidbits we've ever produced for the last 5 years. I might not recommend that, but you can certainly do that if you'd like. But we would like to encourage you to do that. We try to keep them short, to the point, but there's often a lot of important information we're trying to share in sort of our educational goal with assessment.
Okay. We have an awesome Canvas course that you can take. It is 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how invested you are in winning every game, because there are games. It's exciting, it's interactive, and we are clearly a lot of fun at assessment, if you haven't been able to tell yet. So complete this course, and Karen Bird designed it. She's pretty epic with the help of Kristen Pample. So you know that it's going to be great. So please complete that course. And it gives you a lot of that groundwork information. It also helps you to explore our Gaucho site a little bit more. But if you want to dig even deeper, you can participate in the Student Affairs Assessment Learning course, where you get 8 weeks of Canvas fun, diving in deeper about student affairs. And no matter what your job is, learning about all of the different aspects of how our campus works and how we interact and how assessment in one area is helping assessment in another area is really effective. So I took it 2 years ago and learned a lot and enjoyed it. So I recommend that, and it counts for FPG for faculty.
So SAL is a great organization. There's lots of assessment organizations out there. SAL, Student Affairs Assessment Leaders, is free. And so you don't have to pay anything to join. And one of the services that they provide, I'm involved, I'm on the webinar committee. We do lots of really interesting webinars. So if you are on, in student affairs, you can be faculty too, but it's obviously much more geared toward our student affairs colleagues. Lots of cool resources there. This course is offered every spring. It ended today for this spring, but we will announce it next time. It's free to take, and you are in discussions with people in a role similar to you or an institution similar to you. It's a really, really well-designed course. It's run by Joe Levy, who's been in student affairs assessment for a very, very long time. So highly recommend it. We'll share more out about that in coming years. And then the last thing that we have is Pam Nelson, our former everything in assessment, but most recently our assessment assistant director, is working on a Canvas book club. It's also going to be available for FPG for faculty once it's designed. And Susky has written sort of the seminal book on assessment. It's available in our library for free, and she is creating a course that will take people through sort of a book study of to get a really good basic understanding of assessment, but diving deeper than our other resources. So that's coming soon. All right. Now, our next one, so that's how you can learn about assessment if you need to learn. The other thing that's not up here, of course, reach out to any of us. We are happy to talk to you about assessment as much as you want. If you don't understand it, we can explain it 25 different ways until you do. And you can even pick a different person to have it explain it to you. And maybe all of us can explain it to you different times. All right. So what about the doing part? So now we've talked about what you need to learn. What are we asking you to do? Mostly we are asking you to engage with us. So we've got Spring Assessment Week coming up, and we're going to have a few clear asks related to Spring Assessment Week. One is, participating, watching this recording. So that's going to be really important. But then that engagement we're hoping will continue as we start thinking through these other issues. So if you know about assessment, if you love assessment or you like assessment, make sure you're sharing that with your colleagues. Talk about what it is you've done, how you've learned. We're going to be working on doing some expanded sharing of our own assessment as it's coming, or sharing stories of assessment so that we can learn more from each other. Roxanne already has run wonderful assessment sharing events at our fall assessment day. Those are all recorded, so you can listen to faculty and staff talk about that on our YouTube channel. GCC Assessment, there you go. All right, we are then going to ask you, just like we have gone to ACT, to think about what the college priorities are. We're going to ask you to continue the conversation in the spaces you're in your departments, in your areas, to really identify what your priorities are for student learning. Where's the need the greatest to strengthen? How can that happen? We're going to ask you to kind of maybe get involved in this work of assessment. Like I said, you can join co-curricular, you can book program, you can help us with gen ed, you can serve on CART as a faculty or a staff member. And CART's really fun. We meet every other week, only 50 minutes. So you get a 10-minute break in between your next meeting. And so we're going to be thinking, are there places for you to lead, maybe within your department, within your area? And lastly, to think about how do you maybe involve others? Who do you need to have on your team? One of the people that we often don't think about that needs to be on our team are students. Are you asking your students where their gaps are? Are you asking your students how you can design better assessments? Are you asking your students how you can create interventions that will help them? So we're going to be thinking a lot about who are the stakeholders, who are the team that need to be coming forward.
Yes. Yeah, I I agree completely. I think it's really interesting when we have these conversations with students, how students often don't even know that they are being assessed at this level of college-wide assessment. And when you share that information with them, they're included. They would love to see the progress that they're making on a particular ILO, especially one that aligns really closely to what they want to do and what their goals are. So we're helping the students by sharing this work out, and then we can also learn a lot from them and help them when we think about those equity gaps that we have and who's falling through that gap and whose voice are we not hearing completely. Asking students gives us a lot of those answers and helps us to redirect and to start that cycle again. So when we look at all of these different things that we can do, it's just taking these small steps in assessment, taking one little step forward and making a huge difference because of it.
And no one who's here at GCC would be able to convince me that they don't get excited thinking about and talking about student learning and how to make it better. So again, we use the word assessment, it's in the name of CART, we've got Get Your Assessment Gear, we're gonna keep talking about assessment, but really, we want those conversations to be focused on improving student learning and how do we do that. And I run across faculty who get talking about it and they get all, you can just see their joy, you can see it in the faces of our staff members. They're like, I solved this problem, I know I help students. And so that's what we want. We want you to kind of be thinking about that joy as you're thinking about this. So the last thing that we are going to mention here is, and I think this was maybe thanks to Roxanne, this title, because we were talking about assessment visionaries in this college conversation, we are now doing Is Your Assessment Vision 2020? Can you see clearly? Do you want to talk about this title at all?
I mean, it just speaks for itself.
It speaks for itself. All right, so what we want to really be doing during Spring Assessment Week, which is April 22nd through the 26th, we're like, as typical, we're asking you to find an hour or so to do some assessment work. We do want you to be listening to this, so good job for those of you who are listening to this. And on that note, we are to our final slide, which is a thank you slide. It gives our assessment web or our assessment email address, which is just assessment@gccaz.edu. You can get to, of course, our Gaucho site if you need that.